Greetings. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Sabbath of Imbolc, which is coming up for many of us here at the beginning of the week. I think I celebrated on the 2nd of February, which I think is Tuesday. Not everyone has a very good idea about what it's about. We all seem to understand Samhain pretty much. We all seem to understand, maybe the solstice a little bit. We all seem to understand harvest, times of harvest or something. Many of us know Ostara because of, maybe coinciding with the Easter holiday or just made other spring celebrations, beginning of spring, coming of that time. But that's what's confusing so many of us, because so many people say, well, if Ostara is the true legitimate beginning of spring with the spring equinox, then what is this Imbolc all about when we say that spring is here, winter's over? Well, winter's not over. That's the key to the understanding. And I just want to talk a few minutes about that. It's not about winter being over, for the first thing. But the second thing is, a lot of people are saying, well, if they can't associate it with anything like a harvest or like, we talked about it, we talk about the light returning. There's always something to celebrate. There's always something very magical about the Sabbaths, around the Sabbaths, like what time of the year, what are the energies, the magical forces that are in play at that time of the year. But people have a lot of trouble with Imbolc. Many people I am close to they call it Candlemas. They don't call it Imbolc. Imbolc, of course, is the Celtic, has to do with the Celtic year. But Candlemas, well, I observe Candlemas with friends. I don't use the term Candlemas privately, because that's a Christian term. It has to do with Christianity and not paganism. So I prefer the term Imbolc, but that's not necessary. It doesn't matter what you call it, because the sentiment is about the same, and there's a lot of similarities that are the same, which you'll see in a minute. First of all, the name Imbolc is a kind of funny thing, and you hear people pronouncing it all kinds of ways. Well, it's really just a simple term. The word Imbolc comes from a term, a Gaelic phrase, a Gaelic term for that means in the belly, in the belly. I think it's pronounced something like, and I wrote it down, Imbolc. Yes, it's hard to say. Imbolc. I believe is the Gaelic word, but I don't speak Gaelic, and I've studied it, but I don't understand it. So if you can correct me, that's fine, but that's not what it's about either. The term comes from that phrase, which means in the belly. And what that means is, in what belly? Whose belly? What's the deal about the belly? Well, in the belly, they're talking about a ew's belly. They're talking about the ewe, the female sheep. The female sheep. Sheep are kind of unique animals, I understand. I'm not also an expert on animal husbandry or anything, but I want to say that it's my understanding that sheep are unique, that sheep breed in the fall and then they gestate over the winter, and around this time of the year, still very much in winter, they begin to show signs that they're ready to lamb. They're ready to give birth to their lambs. And this is the time of the year when the lambs start to be born. And they show the signs by indicating that they are beginning to lactate. They're beginning to produce milk. Okay, for people, this is a big deal. For people that lived in times other than the modern times, when we can have milk available to us all time of the year, people could not have it all time of the year. They had milk for certain times of the year. They had milk, and because the milk, of course, depended very much on the animals' birthing and the animals' when the milk dried up, it was dry, it was gone. So cheese is then actually a byproduct that was made as a method of preserving milk. That's why it was made in the first place, to prolong how long they had access to dairy products. Excuse me. There's something in the air today that's really giving me a little bit of a congestion or phlegm, or I don't know what. Excuse me if I get hoarse or start to cough. I'm not ill. I'm something in the air that's just kind of irritating. Anyway, this isn't a lesson on that, but I just want you for a minute, if you can, just to give a moment's thought to what it would have been like in earlier times when people were so absolutely dependent on what they could grow, what they could hunt, what they could produce to survive. They were dependent, like we've been talking about, how dependent they were on the light and the sun and the warmth and from their fires, and those things were so important to them. Imagine the food, okay? At this time of the year, the food that they had in storage, especially the poorer people, that they had in storage became very, very, the offerings became very meager. What was left was pretty plain. The milk was long gone. Not just that, but vegetables, they might have had stored root vegetables, or the meat was usually gone. Maybe they had bits of some of the dried meat, or bones. Maybe they had, I've studied medieval cooking for about 20 years now, so I have pretty much of an understanding of how they used every bit of the animal, every bit of everything to survive. But pottage is something that even those that were not poor, really for a lot of the year, was a major part of their diet, which was something like think of something like an oatmeal. Something like what they call a pudding, like a pudding. Think of a savory pudding, like a haggis would be, or something like that. Like a sausage, if you will. But it's something that is made up of a lot of grains, or like it could be like in places like I know, like Scotland, barley was a big deal. They had a lot of barley, or they had oats. They had those grains that they would keep, and some days, for days on end, that's what they would survive on, just cooking those grains in some kind of broth or whatever they could find, and that's how they lived. That's what they lived off of. Seasoning, whatever seasoning bits they had, any bit of a dried vegetable, any bit of bits of meat, or a bit of something they could hunt, or something they could put in with it, or something they might have had left over still that was still good that they could use. So they were really by this time of the winter, people were really pretty hungry. At least they were hungry for a little bit of a variety, for sure. Even those that were not maybe so desperate, that maybe had plenty, did not have really a lot of the same foods that they could. Like here I can have something any time of the year. I want a certain food if I'm willing to pay for it. Pretty much have any food I want. That's the way a lot of us live today. Okay? So when the first signs started happening, when the ewes started to produce milk, oh my goodness, they were going to start having milk again. There was also going to be new meat in the future because they were going to produce more lambs, right? Also, at that time of the year, we start to see some kind of greening of the earth. Some kind of greening of the earth, they call it. I remember as a little girl growing up in Pennsylvania, remembering how people would welcome crocus, the flowers, in the springtime. They would pop up in the snow. There would still be snow on the ground, and there would be blooming crocuses up above, and people were so excited about that. And I thought that was really pretty, and that's lovely. But we didn't eat those. Imagine what it would have been like when you look outside, you start foraging, and you're going outside, and you see the first signs of new growth, some kind of new growth. And one of the first things that come up are the greens. Now, this is where we get personal, because this is where I can I can identify with this very much because in my own little suburban, little bitty city lot, I see this happening every year in my garden. And we have a 12-month of the year. We don't have snow. I don't have snow, but it gets really cold and it gets really stark outside and the ground. And trust me, my garden, I'm starting to grow some things now in my winter garden, some of my cool weather crops. But there's been a couple months since I've really been able to harvest anything. Anything that's out there ready, it's not ready to harvest. It hasn't been ready to harvest yet. It was growing, and I'll be able to harvest it soon. Some of the things, like the cruciferous and the cruciferous vegetables and things like that. But the greens like chard and spinach, I'm still waiting. They're still not quite big enough for me to eat. Okay. But I'm getting other things. I'm getting nasturtiums. I've been getting nasturtiums. I have flowers on some of my nasturtiums. They're just coming up. The bed was completely bare. Bare dirt. And now it's filling up with nasturtiums. Nasturtiums, I can eat the flowers, but I can also eat the greens. Okay. I see things, nettles are starting to come up through the ground. Dandelions, pretty soon we're going to be seeing dandelions come up. These early greens are the first things, and herbs are the first things that the people saw in the past coming up. How grateful they were to have that. I have several blogs on the internet. One of them is an accompanying blog to this, which, where my shop is, Bird in the Crown. But I also have the Good Wife's Garden blog, which I have linked in the past, and I'll link these up with these links again if you're interested. Which is it was a beginning blog. It has a lot of, in the beginning, some of the simple lessons that I learned in my garden and some simple recipes. Some of my candy and stuff I keep up on there. But I also have a blog. It's called Becoming Imbolc, and it's an SCA blog. It's a blog that sort of details some of my lessons in medieval cooking, some of my experiences with medieval cookery. And one thing I'm fascinated, and I made all the time, and now it's not just a part of my SCA life, but it's becoming a little bit a part of my mundane life, is the idea of a spring pudding, or the idea of making something that's called a spring pudding. And what a spring pudding was when you take those grains, that pottage, that simple pottage that you might have had, make a pudding of it or whatever, or a pottage of the grain. In my case, it was barley. And then you add to it, allow that to thicken, and as it cools, it will thicken, or cooks, it will thicken, depending on how you prepare it. And then all the fresh grains I could find, I would chop up and put in there. And then I would form patties and fry those up in a little bit of fat and eat those drizzled with honey. And those were delicious. They're delicious. People love them. And they vary. You can use it for anything. You do cakes like that. You can do any kind of grain like that. Okay. Any kind of pottage you can do in that way. Okay. I was really interested to see, because I'm sort of making a lot of maybe information you're not that interested in, but I just want to show you how these ideas carry on even in today. I was looking around on YouTube. I like to watch a lot of, I told you some of the homesteaders I watch, and also some of the food channels. I like to watch, all about food. I'm a bit of a foodie. And I was watching Lydia Bastianich. Is that her name? Bastianich, yes. She's a very famous Italian cook. And she was making what she called Italian lettuce quiche. I think Italian lettuce quiche, which she made, which I was interested in because I think I saw right away she was using a lot of eggs. I'm always looking for ideas to use of my eggs because I have a lot of eggs, especially coming up in the spring. I'm going to have a lot of eggs. But I still have some eggs in my storage, in my long-term storage, that I need to use up before my chickens really get back into some serious laying. Okay? Or we're going to be... So I need to get rid of some of the old ones before to make room for the new. But anyway, so I was seeing this, and this is like the same kind of thing, like a pottage, but instead of using grain, she uses stale bread, and then she mixes that up with her eggs, and things, and she puts whatever greens she has in that, and she cooks that down. Like she uses old lettuce or the outside leaves of the lettuce, or this what really appealed to me. You could use kale or any kind of the greens that I would use in a spring pudding. I could be putting into any kind of herbs. I could be putting into these little tiny quiches, and then she bakes that. So that's a modern adaptation of a very, very old principle, which she probably based on in an ancient recipe from the Italians, okay? With the same thing, because whatever people were, whatever they had around them is what they used. Okay? And that brings me to where I am today in my video. Understanding Imbolc, understanding what it is about, that promise that the excitement, the magic is out of nothingness, out of that death. Remember when we said at Samhain, how things have to die for things to grow again. The tomatoes have to rot and die for those seeds to be viable. So I can grow new tomatoes from those seeds. You can't just take a tomato and a nice ripe tomato and slice it up and take the seeds out and plant them in the ground and have it grow a new tomato plant. They have to sort of ferment in that tomato. So that tomato really should be a very, very, very ripe one, almost ready to just turn rotten before you harvest the seeds. That's a very important part of the process. Okay. We know from gardening, by the time the flowers are being put on our herbs, that herb is going to be spent. If it's an annual, that herb is going to be done. You don't want it to flower, because once it flowers, once your parsley flowers, once your basil goes to flower, your basil's going to start to die. It's not going to continue to grow. That's why you have to keep cutting at it, keep harvesting it. Okay. So we had to allow things to die in order to have something grow. So we allowed everything died around us in the fall. Think about it, or the onset of winter. In the ancient days, it was winter, summer. At the end of summer, things died, and everything around you was dead. The trees were bare. The ground was frozen, and then all of a sudden, come around this time of the year, you start seeing new growth coming out of that dead land, out of that dead tree, out of that dead flower. Something new has come. There's the magic. Okay, I can even make it more specific to me, and I can tell you, in my yard, I had to have a beloved tree removed in my backyard. And I'm still devastated that that tree's gone. It is a hole in my heart that tree's not in my yard anymore. I've told you that on here before, okay? Well, I might not have mentioned it. I kind of mentioned that was a very big presence for fairies to me in that area of my lawn. In that area of my garden, I knew there was a lot of activity back there from fairies all the time, and I had a feeling that that's where they like to be. And one of the ways I knew that was because the place at this time of the year was just alive everywhere with wood sorrel. Wood sorrel is something that grows. It comes out of nowhere. I spent a lot of years hacking away at it. I get out of here, before I realized what it was and what it could be used for. But it looks a little bit like clover, but the leaves are very pronounced heart-shaped leaves, and it shoots up little flowers. Like in my case, it's yellow flowers, and it's an oxalis, I think it's called. It's like a lemony kind of a thing, but it is very tasty. It's not only tasty, but it is a tonic. It is a good spring to be used for a lot of spring cleansing, okay? Which was another reason that people ate these spring puddings. It wasn't just because of the taste, but they used a lot of those things, do a spring tonic to try to cleanse the impurities out of the body before the new, okay? I'm getting ready for the new year, so to speak, okay? So anyway, I was devastated. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm not going to have my sorrel, because I do like to harvest it, I do like to use it for a lot of things. It's very short-lived here. I think it can grow for a longer period of time, but it basically just gets too hot and too sunny in my backyard for it to, anything like that to survive. So it doesn't survive at all. But at any rate, the other day I look out there and I've got sorrel. I see the yellow flowers. I've got sorrel growing in that dark place without any tree there. And that's where it likes to grow. It likes to be like underneath a big tree, a big old tree. There it's growing. It's growing. So I'm excited. That's like my miracle. It's like my magic in my yard. Out of nothing comes something. I've had some little bit of other experiences here on YouTube that are very much tied into the whole feeling of Imbolc. And one is with the homesteading community, some of those people that I listen to. I'm not a part of the community. They would not probably welcome me into their community, but at any rate, that's not important. I get information from them, and they're interesting. Some of them are interesting. But anyway, they have what they call, celebrating the month of January is something they call Canuary, where they share a lot of canning recipes and videos. But they also are encouraging people during the month of January to eat out of their storage, to eat what you have, because it's important that you go and here it is. Before I start getting ready into my new season coming up, where I'm going to be having a lot of vegetables, new tomatoes, and a lot of things that I'm going to need that pantry shelf space. I'm going to need the jars, the empty jars. I'm going to need the freezer space for some things. Okay, so go in there, organizing what you have, taking an inventory of what you have, and then making room for the new. Starting to plan some meals around there. And they say through the month of January they were encouraging us to not buy anything at all for a major meal. Try to make as many the daily meal, your main meal, whatever it is for the day, out of what's in your storage, without with as little as possible shopping. Just shopping for perishables and those kind of things. Well, and I have to say we did a pretty good job of it. We didn't go we weren't deliberate in not trying to shop. We were just mindful of it. But what we did do, something we did do as a part of it was, we went and I made now that I have finally started my new journal, I told you that I started my new journal for 2021. I went and I started an inventory in my journal and listed items, and in our case we are checking several freezers because I have a chest freezer. We have a refrigerator, or in our kitchen has a freezer at the bottom, a nice pretty roomy freezer, and I have an extra refrigerator in the garage which has just a little bit of freezer space in there. So all told I have that much freezer space, and of course then I have some long-term pantry storage both in my garage on shelving and out in my sunroom and shelves out there. So where I do home can things and things extra stock that I stock up on from the store when things like go on sale, like kidney beans. What comes to mind, because my husband made chili yesterday, and we were able to use kidney beans from storage. We were able to use diced tomatoes from storage and tomato sauce from storage, and ground meat from storage for his chili. So we didn't have to buy anything. Cornmeal, you make cornmeal, we made cornbread. We didn't have to buy anything. But anyway, we made a list of the inventory, and it was amazing. My inventory is 4 pages. 4 pages long. Okay, now a lot of it is condiments, pickles, barbecue sauce, jams, pickled vegetables, pizza sauce. But it's meals, but it makes a lot of meals. My point is, a very, very simple meal. You can make a meal of fried eggs and potatoes if you have the right condiments. Use some tasty tomato jam, or maybe something, or maybe some pickled jalapenos or something to put in there. It makes a special treat. So taking something from almost nothing is kind of a neat thing. Challenge yourself. If you have any kind of storage at all, just in your refrigerator, try to go a week without shopping. Just by eating leftovers and stuff or making something from what's in your refrigerator. You have eggs, you have cheese, do you have bread, do you have milk? Do you have a little bit of chicken left over? Do you have any, do you have any vegetables? And try to see what you could do. It's kind of interesting. Also, interestingly, I noticed that my SCA people are doing something similar coming in now in February. They're doing something called, it's not really meant to use your stash, but we in the SCA are known to have so many projects, get involved in making so many projects. It's a very artsy kind of a community for the most part, because it's people, we have to, in order for us to have our costuming, our clothing, or things that we use, we really have to be able to sew, or be able to, somebody has to sew and then we buy from them. But it's, we can't go to the mall and buy our clothing. Pastimes and a big part of the SCA culture revolve around making things, and as they would in period. And as a result, we have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff in our house. And I have a whole room. My whole guest room is also called my fiber room, because it is full of all kinds of different yarn I mundanely knit and crochet. I also do some, dabble in weaving, dabble in embroidery, dabble in, a lot of things. I sew. It's my sewing room. It's my sewing storage as well. I also have done some dabbling in dyeing, dyeing my fiber, spinning my fiber and dyeing it, and all binding, There's a lot of things. I also have a lot of yarn. I have 2 sheep. I have 2 sheep in my closet. 2 still leavings, a lot of raw wool to process that I've had for years. I've been working my way through it, but it's slow going. So I have recently organized that room and all my bits and stuff like that, and trying to use some of that stash up. What can I make out of it? I made some Christmas gifts this year I told you I made some hats. I knitted some hats for my daughter, and I'm making socks. I'm doing socks for myself. I've given everybody I know socks, now I'm giving some for myself. I'm doing those kind of things. But in the SCA community, they're having something in February called February. Instead of February, it's February. So we had January, and February, which is kind of funny. But they're doing there's all these old online classes and things, since we can't meet in person. And, so I'm looking, signing up, what don't I know, what do I have? Oh, look, I have something, I can come to this class. Oh, look, they're processing raw wool. Whatever. If you're interested in any of those, they're going to be making videos of these classes, and it's open to the public. These are not SCA, even though most people are SCA people. There's still a lot of other people involved in this that have nothing to do with the SCA, because of the fiber workshops and dyeing workshops that a lot of people attend every year, that have a lot of mundane muggles. I don't know the mundane. I don't like to call them mundane people, but the people, the non-SCA people, involved in that. So there's going to be all kinds of people, and nobody's wearing garb. It's just like regular classes, online classes. So I can leave the link if any of you are interested in any of those things. My point there is, in bringing that up, was taking I don't have anything, to I have so much. I have so many yarns, and this is not another lesson in being grateful for what you have. That kind of thing falls flat on me a lot of times when people are so sad because they don't have fill in the blank, and people say to them, oh, you should be grateful for what you do have. All you really need is love. Well, yeah, that's all you need is love. But it's not all you need. Is it all you need? I don't know about you, but I need myself some, I need a sandwich and I need some socks. I have to eat something and I have to keep myself warm. So it's not all you need. Well, where can I get it? Sometimes you have it and you don't see it. It's like me going out in my garden a month ago and saying, everything's gone. My tree is gone. I won't ever see my sorrel again. All of a sudden, here comes my sorrel. All of a sudden, here comes my nasturtiums. All of a sudden, I'm hoping to see nettles. I want to see nettles really bad. And people, if any of you are watching me from the UK, you might be laughing that I want to plant nettles, but that's what it comes to here. I know you have them everywhere. You're growing them everywhere. Everywhere I was, and in the north of England, anyway, there was nettles. Okay, so it's not about just be thankful for what you have. It's about finding what you have and believing that you have something that you didn't when you didn't think you had it. Believing we are preparing for the seed. We're preparing for the seed to be planted in the garden. This isn't the time we're actually planting the seeds. This is the time we are preparing to plant. Some of us get confused because we're practicing by planting. We're starting some plants indoors that are going to be transplanted out there. A lot of you gardeners are doing the same thing. You're starting some plants indoors under grow lights that you're going to transplant out in the spring when the ground gets warm enough. That's fine. Okay, but that's not exactly the same thing. Planting those seeds, planting it in the garden is when it starts to count that it's coming from the garden. What Imbolc is about is looking at the bare ground and believing that something is going to come. And there you see the first signs of something coming. That's the magic. That is the magic. The magic is, I didn't think I had anything to give my daughter, and I ended up knitting her 2 hats from beautiful hat wool that was perfectly wool hat. It was perfect for what I needed. I didn't know I had. It was in there. It was in there, but I didn't know I had it until I went and organized it. My husband made chili and cornbread for dinner last night, and he didn't know he could. He didn't know he had the stuff. Didn't know he had the stuff. Okay, that's what Imbolc is about. That's what the magic is all about. If you're not talking about food, if you're not talking about knitting, what about if you're talking about just yourself? Remember, at the beginning of the year when we made our intentions now, and what kind of intentions did we want? What were we seeking? What were we seeking? It's not, remember we said, it's not about resolving to do something. It's setting intentions to do something. You know that those things will not happen if you do not have the groundwork laid. Make sure, if you're still on track, to see those intentions manifest, that the groundwork is laid in your personal life. The groundwork is laid for what you wish to sow. The groundwork is laid for which you wish to harvest later on. What you ultimately want to manifest. That preparation now, the preparation is now, believing that inside you is what you need. Just like inside your garden is what it needs for things to spring forth. Inside you is what you need for your hopes, your goals, your desires, your, plans, how they're going to come true. How are they going to manifest and be made true? You have what you have inside. Believe it, and then see the magic. See the magic that comes from that. I wish you all a very, very blessed Imbolc. Remember, of course, that Imbolc is a season. It's a Sabbath. Yes, it's a day in the wheel, on the wheel. The celebration of it, perhaps, is a Sabbath. But the season of Imbolc will last until a star comes at the equinox. The light will continue to increase, 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 until day and night are once again equal. Once again equal, right? Okay? So don't panic if you don't know what, if you don't have anything done for Ostara, don't worry about it. We're going to be talking about some of the things that we're going to do here. I'm going to talk about some projects that we're maybe doing. We're going to talk about maybe some foods that we're using. What kind of foods are we eating during this time of the year? Those kind of things. Some kind of activities we're doing during the year. I wish you all a very, very blessed Imbolc. Thanks for watching.